Welcome to Fifth Wave Blockchain Hackathon panel discussion on how blockchain can actually enable local impacts. So we have a terrific panel that is going to bring to you foundational information on blockchain and how it actually can influence local impact and have a global effect. So today we have with us incredible panelists, as I mentioned, Howard Anglin, he will share a bit about his incredible background and his expertise in blockchain. We have Barbara Fluegge that is coming to us from Europe that will also share about mobility and blockchain and education and how that can actually impact. And then we have Flora that is from Nigeria. Now, Flora will give us some background in regard to agriculture, and you'll find out why, agriculture and blockchain, which is an incredible use of blockchain and how the supply chain actually is impacted by blockchain. So she'll share more about that. So with no further ado, I'd like to tell you a bit about Fifth Wave. We are located in Silicon Valley, which is the Bay Area of California. We have been established for 4 years. We are a holistic approach on STEAM education. And the opportunity to have STEAM education is to say that everything is integrated. There is not one vertical that stands alone. It builds an ecosystem in which products are developed, services are provided as well as developed, and it's an opportunity to really think about how we can use our interests in various areas of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, and how we can actually build out those products in a very holistic approach that meets the needs of everyone who uses it, and it engages everyone who uses it. So we mainly focus on serving the underrepresented. So enough about Fifth Wave. Please do, I'll put in the chat, go onto our website, engage with us, sign up. We have a page on LinkedIn. As many of you may know, we're actually streaming on LinkedIn today as well. We have a Facebook page also, and we are on YouTube. So with no further ado, I really would like to introduce to you today this incredible panel. And they will again provide foundational information for blockchain. And I want to mention that we have a blockchain weekend happening that I'll share more about at the end of our talk today. So with no further ado, Howard, would you like to kick it off? I would really like, if you could, share with us some foundational information about blockchain and why it's important. And tell us about yourself as well, of course.
Great, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and thanks for having me here, Dr. Samani, and to my fellow panelists, greetings. So my name is Howard Anglin. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I'm a consultant, former corporate consultant, and pivoted to a private consultant working with clients around the world, working with them on emerging technologies, including blockchain, of course. So blockchain is, to me and my clients, I believe it's quite important. You know, it's more than a database. You know, a lot of people will simplify this entire blockchain industry or this blockchain technology as a database, but it's more than a database. So while blockchain is a database, as we've known them in the past, a relational database, is not a blockchain. So they're not interchangeable. So there are several use cases for blockchain. You know, agritech is one of them. There are several, and I think my other panelists will get into that as well. But so blockchain in its simplified explanation is a type of block, is a type of database that allows for records to be had and shared among individuals in a trusted way. So, it's more than just a list that you pass from individual to individual. Each individual within a shared space for this record then has access to that list. So as a result, it creates lots of opportunities and lots of ways to address challenges that we face on a daily basis.
Great, wonderful. So what have you found, Howard, in your years of experience, the various uses of blockchain, and why do you really find that that is important?
Well, it is important. It's many have characterized blockchain and blockchain technology as the next iteration of the internet. Where the internet was several decades ago, that's where blockchain technology is, and as a result, we will be seeing a lot of innovation and changes in the next several years and decades. Extrapolating or looking back at the internet, we were able to send emails. We still do that today. But today, we're able to have online banking. We could watch 4K movies on our phones, right? As a result of the internet. So there are multiple discoveries yet to be exposed that the blockchain technology will bring forward.
Excellent, excellent. And as I say, if you're not a part of technology, it will be done to you. So it's very, very important to engage, to be aware, hence the reason for our session today. It's an awareness. We're trying to bring to the forefront that blockchain is being actually used and utilized by various sectors, such as banking, as you mentioned. So thank you so much for that. The automotive, anyone who will actually attend tomorrow is our boot camp for the hackathon. And during the boot camp, we will actually talk about various use cases of blockchain. It begins at 10 a.m. PST time, and please convert your time, register on Eventbrite or through LinkedIn to attend the blockchain hackathon. We actually have over 60 teams already registered. It's amazing, phenomenal. I'm just so thrilled, believe me. And it's going to be around the world. So you will actually get to work with various people and get to meet various hackers and people who are just interested in technology, this emerging technology on a global scale. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Flora. Flora, please tell us about yourself and how blockchain is impacting your particular sector, your particular vertical.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Hi everyone. Thank you, Dr. Samani. My name is Flora Asibe. I'm a researcher at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, ITA, Ibadan, Nigeria. I'm very excited to be on this panel and to share my little knowledge on blockchain in agriculture. So in Africa and Nigeria, like agriculture is one of the most important sectors because it has huge economic potential. But then its full potential remains untapped, and for farmers or growers or consumers, there is like little difference in profit margin, increased food availability, or even delivery. But and also about 30% or of the food produced for human consumption does not reach final consumers. However, investments in agricultural technologies that have the potential of connecting farmers and consumers to the right supply chain can impact positively on livelihoods and the economy. So this is where blockchain comes in. So like blockchain agriculture is becoming a trend, especially in this world of technology. As an agriculturist and a plant disease scientist, I understand the need to increase food production and how diseases can affect the availability of crops, even their yield, quantity of produce, and income for growers and farmers. So blockchain in agriculture can help smallholder farmers to improve crop disease surveillance using remote field surveys. For example, I think in 2019, my institute, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, partnered with Rights Mesh to design, develop, and in farming community. I think that was in Tanzania, combining the power of blockchain and mobile mesh networking. And other similar blockchain technologies or apps that can be applied to plant disease diagnostics or surveillance include Secure Agri, and other, not just plant disease surveillance, other like supply chain and monitoring yield or crops to plants at specific times and then connecting farmers to market. So Secure Agri, you have AgriConnect, you have AgriPay, you have AgriCoin, AgriCard, AgriWallet, and etc. So many of them. Another important thing the blockchain can do is that it can provide information for growers. So information provided through blockchain can help the growers or the farmers to plan his growing season. For example, he or she knows what to grow, the best time of the year to grow the crop in relation to pests or diseases, and also the crop in the particular crop in demand per season, because of the need of the crop for certain community groups in whether rural or urban markets. So I think blockchain can also assist in connecting farmers to market, just like I said, and also expanding their markets. So it can also help a local farmer grow to become an international farmer, because he is able to he's able to access more people, or probably he has improved on the quality of his products to meet international standards. Blockchain can also assist farmers or growers to increase the value of that commodity or whatever they are producing. So the farmer is able to track, to trace, and then maintain records so that they are able to provide consumers with highly verified information. So the farmer knows exactly what his produce is all about, from quality to probably the ingredients and everything used to produce it. And then the consumer in turn trusts the farmer or the grower, and then these kind of promotes the farmer's brand or product, and then people continue to patronize those farmers or growers. It also can also impact on the value of the nation's currency because of the high value product, which attracts a premium price. So also foreign exchange markets, earnings, and all that come into the picture as well. Blockchain can also provide information that will help growers to create market, like I said. So to create new markets, for example, markets to curb food wastage. So from a study, it was said that 30% of food produced are lost before they get to the final consumers. So there could be a new market where producers can actually market healthy fruits which have little physical injury to consumers who need them. But then, because these consumers cannot pay premium, they can actually buy this still good and quality foods at a little less than the average price. So this food don't end up being wasted. So such foods like imperfect foods or fruits, as they call it. So also foods that are not consumed by that are not consumed at big dinners or big events, they can be channeled to be sold at reduced prices to people willing to pay for those foods instead of trashing or burning them. So this is what blockchain can help to connect farmers to like new markets, okay, where you can actually sell your produce or create extra money or probably diversify what you're producing, yeah, or like value addition basically. And also this also can also impact on our SDG goal because you're saving the climate and then you're reducing hunger, right? So yeah, so finally I think in areas of food desert as well, it can also help help consumers to make better decisions, like right decisions on healthy foods, connecting consumers to where you can actually get healthier foods or healthy foods in areas where you don't have such healthy foods, like in food desert areas. And then, stores that sell these healthy fresh foods through data generated, you can be able to connect, and then you have access to those foods, and then they're able to make better choices of, and eat healthy, and then get the right food for the right value for your money in terms of quality of foods consumed. So I think the potential of technology and application of blockchain in solving agricultural challenges cannot be overemphasized. Investing and scaling of technologies that provide potential markets and sustainability is crucial for global and African agricultural transformation. So I think that the blockchain could be helpful and is helpful in agricultural production and I think supply chain and increasing livelihoods. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, thank you so much. There's a key reason why I really wanted us to hone in and focus. Number one, Flora is an impeccable researcher, and we have worked together on other projects, and I knew that she had this treasure, this unlocked treasure about how to connect agriculture with blockchain and identifying potential entrepreneurial opportunities through that. In 2020, we actually awarded through a VC consortium that I'm a part of, and it had $100 million. And we actually awarded a startup that wanted to focus on the food deserts here in the US. So I just knew that there was a global opportunity to really think about looking at the supply chain, looking at, as Flora was saying, from the farm and the farmer directly to the end user or the merchant that would actually sell the product. So I'm really, really happy that you provided this very in-depth knowledge for our attendees and for others that would listen and be interested in looking at how agriculture actually connects directly with blockchain, that integrate, that intersection. So thank you very, very much. The importance of this for this particular hackathon, that was the I'll tell you exactly why moment, is to say that we will be focusing on a problem of food security. So the problem of food security is global. It is not only a local concern, but it is a global issue. We can connect through the mobility, as Flora had alluded, and as Barbara will actually dive in a bit deeper into the mobility of blockchain and how we can connect in actually eliminating, and I'm going to say eliminating, food insecurity and being able to equip these food deserts with nutritional value so we all can have a healthy, thriving lifestyle. So with no further ado, I'd like for Barbara to begin to share on her concepts of mobility and blockchain and thinking about education as well as a key component of this, but focusing on the mobility. Barbara, please introduce yourself and share a bit about your topic today.
Okay, thanks very much. I hope you all can hear me well. My name is Barbara Fluegge. I actually already, I'm German, I live in Switzerland, so I also prepared some slides. And if it's okay for you, I would like to share them now, or we can share them later. So
Yes, absolutely. One moment, please, Barbara. Thank you.
So before we start, let me introduce myself here, Barbara Fluegge. So I'm an entrepreneur. I experienced many years in corporate life as well. I worked for a US Silicon Valley startup as well. And actually I coped in my assignments the entire value chain, right? From trend scouting to design of solutions, hackathons, being a judge in a couple of hackathons as well, and a business coach, up to the moment of leading and managing teams, project teams, but also reporting lines in various different geographies, right? And to me, everything is, let's say, connected. It's interconnected. So mobility actually is in, let's say, it's in my DNA, and we will see it's in all of our DNAs. So about 2 years ago, I started my own business, Digital Value Creators. I'm also an author. And my newest edition is about mobility again. Mobility moves minds, moves our minds. And that's why I would like to share a number of thoughts here also as, let's say, inspiration to the blockchain community and to the audience and the listeners. So, and I'm also happy, of course, to release the presentation, and we can share it also via LinkedIn. Yeah. So when we look into how blockchain actually can be used for new opportunities to mobility locally and also connecting globally, and we heard it from Flora, but also from Howard, I mean, a blockchain is also a mean of being mobile, right? Digitally mobile. So when we now look into the dimensions of mobility, and you mentioned it, I mean, we are here for Thwaites, right? So education, being mobile to learn and to actually digest, but also ideate new perspectives, that's also a sign. It's a dimension of mobility, how call it. It's about mobility where actually we can be reached, like this little food box here or a booth here somewhere on, let's say, the Irish or the British continent. Mobility dimensions also are affecting every one of us. The ones that cannot afford it, or the ones also that are actually in a danger zone, that actually don't have any luxury of being mobile. And of course, we're looking now with the hackathon into those that actually help us, and it's you in the audience, but also you that are working and co-working with others that are helping us to ideate new kind of use cases and solutions and technology, and make technology a mean for mobility. So what does mobility mean to you? For me, it's about we expose ourselves to everything when we're mobile, digitally, physically, but also mentally, right? So we are exposed to others also when we are mobile, when we're traveling, when we consume a certain service or an app, then yes, we also expose ourselves. But there are constraints, and there are 3 constraints where mobility is not there. It's not really helping us to connect if we cannot afford to be mobile, physically, digitally, mentally, unless we also have systems and structures that limit our access to mobility, that harms us as well. And the third element, the third danger zone, is that systems and structures turn mobility into an unaffordable luxury private good. And mobility to me is a public good. There is a right of everyone and everything. So but for me, the hackathon and you with your creativity and your ideas and your inspiration is about to help us to diminish to the utmost extent these restrictions, because these restrictions actually hit ourselves in our private life, but also our businesses, our families, mentally, our dreams and our professions. And they hit you, they hit us. And actually, and of course, we like to overcome that. So locally and globally, with mobility that works, the physical and the digital is always not just distant away, it's really, it can be connected, right? Locally, of course, we look rather into reach, affordability. We look into a convenient mobility service for products, for food, for people. We look into availability. Globally, we look into trust, especially trust. We look also into the resilience part and the comfort, yeah? So mobility in the very beginnings, everyone looked into, of course, goods and passenger mobility. But with the digital part, we look also into information, data, and services, and how to actually go from local to global, but also backwards, because we also need to look into the reverse mobility when we look into the circular economy, for example, and also waste management. So the origin of digital mobility solutions, and we're talking here about kicking off the hackathon, right? Originally, everything started with this great invention about being on the road and being able to target a location, an office, a shopping location, or an event, or very, very importantly, visiting our families. And over the time, we had this benefit of being mobile. So there was a benefit equation there, a formula that said, okay, if I do this, if I can afford that, if I have that mean, there's a benefit of being mobile. And of course, through the motivation of technology and digitization and all these great advancements, inventions came, for example, in the context of a car. And the car, actually, we swap it over time, let's say with a space shuttle. We swap it over time with a blockchain element that actually travels for us globally. So, so digital solutions can help us to fulfill this right to mobility, and the right also to mobility to supply our freedom of action. And that's why I'm always saying it turns into the basic requirement, basic need on the Maslow's pyramid of requirements. Over the time, we talk about digital mobility solution, we go, let's say, we left this frame of a module of a car, of a train, and more looked into what mobility really does to us. How can we consume it? How does it actually help our situation? Yeah. What you see on the right-hand side here is what Mercedes-Benz calls the Energizing Coach. And it's not just in the car that my blood pressure is being measured, my mood is being controlled if I'm under stress because of a congestion situation. It also actually helps us to look into what does it mean to be out there. Maybe we are in a safety concerning situation. So the point is that the touch points where we experience mobility get more and more digitized and more virtual. So from the physical, we see this movement to digital and virtual mobility. And of course, in a luxury world, we can imagine a shopping space, a great living space. But mobility does more to that because it helps us to connect the ones that are not connected yet because they live in the rural areas, because there is a future of life. And I call this chart here the cause and effect chart, where we look into the various elements of the impact that mobility gives to us. So it is based on our persona, ourselves. It's about the one who likes to explore. We have political and societal and cultural dimensions. And of course, if mobility works in the right manner, there should be a growth momentum being actually executed. There should be an economic growth you experience where you are locally, because you are able to actually bring your product, your goods, your services, your expertise, your know-how, and you can export it globally. So there's a local and a global impact. And this is the ideal frame, let's say, when I call it that mobility really works, right? It works to your cause because you can see and you can measure the effect, and it is good for you. And you will see on this chart later, when you later look into that, you will find a number of things here also for the hackathon teams where you say, hey, wait a second, this is really a moment where I like to improve it when we look into food. Because we know, I mean, what we saw before, it's mobility touches everything. It touches the components, the end product. It touches the ones that help us deliver, that help us consume, that help us present, and that help us actually to get the right food on time, right? And not just that it's being locked somewhere or being stuck somewhere. So the point is also that impact actually, and I took this here from a report looking into the 3 dimensions. So the real chances for blockchain and co, I call it, is about that you create with your blockchain ideas and prototypes over the hackathon weekend, that you look into how can I ignite a significant change, because technology is there to serve the change, and technology is there to serve the ones that need food, right? When we look into the food topic. And of course, we have a societal attitude about looking into what we allow technology to do with us, how technology actually helps us to get access to something and to components and so forth. And of course, there also it's a regulatory environment. And overall, the regulation should not be, let's say, bigger than the societal need and your personal need, for example, for food or for health or for access and a possibility actually, for example, to meet your family and friends. So there needs to be like an equilibrium. So there there is kind of an equation behind a secret formula, so to speak, right? And when we look again into what I introduced beforehand, the mobility dimensions, they actually stimulate blockchain designs and use cases, and not vice versa. So when you look into the personas here, you see on the screens a number of personas, and not just, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, because a persona can be a good, a product, a mean, a person, a team, an organization, an institution. Think about how to actually serve them with your blockchain idea, how to actually help them to get access to food, and what kind of food they need, and what the food business processing actually would look like. I really like that food example and the food topic a lot, because for me, mobility solutions are really help for everything, and mobility equals food, because it is transferable, it's affordable. There is a service-oriented manner to consume mobility, same as consuming food. It's reachable, and actually it can be, the solution is applicable and adaptable to any habitat and local profile. So mobility, how I call it, moves our minds. So it helps us to look into new dimensions of ideas. And on the food sector, same as for the mobility sector, when you look at the upper image, it's really about giving access to affordability, transferability, so that we're able to serve all the others out there, and that we really also kick off a growth momentum. So in herein, I hope that your blockchain team designs a solution that scales globally with a local impact, and you will have very different thousands of ideas. I call it the origami of ideas. So a fish turns into a bird, or into a ship, or into a plant, like what we heard from Flora. So it's really about, I really like to see that your team designs a solution that scales globally with a local impact. And my name is Barbara Fluegge, and I'm really very, very honored, Jeannice and the colleagues, that I'm also part of the panel and of the hackathon team here. Thank you a lot. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so very much. Barbara, you brought it home. She circled it back to the theme of how we can actually enable, by using blockchain, enable on a local level that impacts us globally. Howard laid down an incredible foundation of understanding blockchain, taking it from the granular systematic approach of what is blockchain and the importance of how it actually impacts across various sectors. Flora mentioned how we could actually focus on one particular sector, it being agriculture and food. And what does that mean to that particular sector? What are the impacts of this technology to that particular sector? And Barbara just circled it back to say that it is a vital part of who we are as human beings to know that food security is foundational to the well-being on a local level as well as global. So with all of that said, I really would like to hear from the audience. I shared, please do put your questions in the chat. We're happy to address them and to speak about, or I can unmute you if you'd like, but to ask questions of this incredible panel. And I'm happy to navigate as well as respond to any questions as well.
And Dr. Samani, so if I might add, and I think Dr. Barbara really, brought it forward, like you mentioned, full circle. And she mentioned mobility. When you think about mobility, and then, in the context of blockchain, I think, I mentioned earlier that blockchain is a type of database. So at the center of blockchain is data. Now, at the center of blockchain also is the mobility of data and the governance of that data. So, that's what actually determines some of the use cases. I think you had asked me earlier, but I didn't mention all the use cases. Agri-tech is one, fintech is another, that's very popular, throughout the world right now, because that's money as data, and then the mobility of that data, which is money. There's identity solutions as well. There are solutions with certification, right? Did you actually complete a certain level of study? How do you track that? It's a type of data. How do you govern that data in a trusted, secured way where it can be shared with the community, mobilized data, so that we can all benefit? So again, with the governance of data that I mentioned, identity solutions. So it's really the synchronicity of that data. How do you get that data everywhere at the same time so that we could all interact and benefit from it? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Howard. Thanks for elaborating more on what the importance is of blockchain and its uses. Awesome, awesome. I'm waiting for questions from the chat. Let's dive in a bit while people are formulating their questions, and I'll share a bit about the hackathon as well. As I mentioned, this is the kickoff for Fifth Wave Blockchain Hackathon. We will be kicking off tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. PST time. Will be the evening for many of the people that are online now. We are happy and excited that you have registered either directly on our Fifth Wave website, which is fifthwave.org. I have put it in the chat, or on LinkedIn or on Facebook. We have the opportunity of coming together as a global society to eradicate, to think about, to create, to innovate on various ideas and concepts of how we can address insecurity of food, which would be food deserts and the lack of getting food to people, and the food security of knowing the value and the connection of food to people. So we have this great opportunity this weekend to address some of those social concerns and to come up with some innovative ideas that could potentially be funded and could start many, many businesses. So are there any questions of the panelists? What are some of the thoughts? Here's one question. What are some of the thoughts of the use cases for ensuring privacy and security is designed and developed at the front end versus discovery that they are issues in the back end. And that came from Rodney. Thank you, Rodney, for your question. Howard, would you like to kick off a comment for that?
Sure, yes. So, so how I would address this is to really build solution with security at the forefront, not as an afterthought. Now, building secured solutions, that's relatively a difficult task to do. However, I believe that blockchain technology allows for a much easier implementation where you can bake security inside of a solution, right? Because of, again, the mobility of data, that, you could share data or credentials easily and securely. So I think that's quite important. I mentioned earlier also there are identity solutions built around data. So having an identity solution built into a product or service from the get-go versus an afterthought trying to build an envelope, a security envelope around a solution is much more difficult. Once you've breached that envelope, then you have access to everything. However, with blockchain technology, you could create these granular governance or granular solutions, secured area. What are you allowed to do? Each task has a different security level, that could be built into a solution using blockchain technology.
Excellent, excellent. So each hub will actually validate that engagement as well through, I think it's wonderful. The security factor, the cybersecurity factor, the security factor is such an integral part of blockchain. And that's where trust can be built and you have those opportunities. Thank you, Howard. We'll talk more about that in our boot camp also. We'll drill down a bit further. Actually, Barbara would like to make a comment.
Yes, exactly. So when Howard talked about the mobility of data, and we talked about food insecurity, right? So one thing is about making food digitally secure. The other aspect is about how to make it physically secure and how to actually synchronize these both streams so that, let's say, the food security on site does not follow, of course, the certificate or the data. And because that's also the aspect of mobilizing the teams, the ones that are involved in the physical movements, right? And I think that's very often a theme that tends to be forgotten, because so much typically, let's say blockchain or some hackathons look into the digital product for blockchain use cases, but not the physical ones. And that's what you do differently, right? Yes, it fits space. And that's why we have the physical and the digital element. And looking into synchronization, or maybe let's say, better say, the orchestration of both.
Exactly, exactly. And that's some of our MVP, our uniqueness. Thank you for pointing that out, Barbara, is that this is in particular, this particular hackathon is a no-code hackathon. So we really are getting into understanding the use of the technology. It's so interesting that people think, well, again, it's technology being done to you if you don't engage or understand it. So it's fascinating to think that people are intrigued with the idea of blockchain. They've heard of it. It's out in the ether, so to speak, but yet there is that reluctancy to really understand it. So we're actually providing this very foundational opportunity to understand the technology, and then hopefully people can see and create ideas and innovate, but also see that blockchain is rather simple. It has layers of complexity. I'm not going to, make it seem like it's ABC or Lego blocks, but it is to the point where we can lay down this foundational understanding so you can better gravitate to the actual learning and the true use possible uses of blockchain. So please, are there more questions? We have time to.
And one thing that we haven't touched on throughout our discussion so far, smart contracts, right? So
Yes.
smart contracts, allow for codification, of agreement. So an agreement could then be written as code, and then that code gets executed while certain conditions are met by the parties who are involved. So it takes out some of it introduces a way to automate agreement, to automate, interaction. And that could be built into a service, built into a system where, not to take out the human factor out of everything, obviously, but it can accelerate certain types of development and services by having this automated way of having agreements executed via smart contracts.
Could you give via contracts? Okay. Could you, Howard, break it down in an example, possibly?
Well, a simple way, going back to coding, and I know this is a no-code hackathon, but I think the simplest way I think of it is, if this happens, then this, right? So, that's an agreement, right? If let's use delivery Amazon. Let's say, the package shows up. When the package shows up, and then the delivery person scans the code, right? Then something can happen. You could have in the background, at the back end of Amazon somewhere, where once that's scanned, some smart contract gets executed, right? So, it's a trigger, basically. A trigger when an event occurs, then something else happens. Right. Versus waiting on paperwork, for instance. Okay, I have to wait for this paperwork, I have to sign off on it, and then something will happen, which may take days or weeks. Which, I brought up paperwork. It basically removes a lot of logistics, for example, involves a lot of paperwork, and that could be replaced in many ways with smart contracts where it will shrink the time for an event to happen or for the next event to occur, because you're not waiting on snail mail or for a certain document to reach a certain party at a certain time.
Exactly. Brilliant, brilliant. I always think of the old adage of being in the queue at a grocery store, and you want to buy food. And who carries cash anymore? No one, very few people carry cash, right? And so, or if you're traveling, you don't carry cash. So it's the opportunity of using your debit card or your credit card. If you're overseas, you have that validation that they have to know that you have left your home country. That's one point of blockchain validation, of knowing that you have left your home country. And they say, okay, well, we will approve for you to use it outside, in my case, outside of the United States. So when I'm traveling and I'm standing in the queue and I'm going to buy food, then I have the opportunity of actually paying through an electronic system with my card that actually says, does she have money in her account? Number one. That's number one. Can I actually pay this vendor for the purchase that that individual is going to purchase? And can I also, there's two validation points there. At first, they're going to say, is this card valid? Can she pay? Then it's going to ask through code whether or not they have the amount that they're requesting. So then they get the okay, they get the approval. So as Howard was saying, it shrinks down that time of validation in microseconds to say whether or not this purchase can actually go through. Then the actual vendor or shopkeeper has the right to say, okay, well, you actually have the money. This card is good. You actually have the money to make this purchase. Therefore, we're going to approve it. So I always see it as a box. It opens And then the money is transferred directly to that particular vendor or shopkeeper, and then it's closed. It goes directly into that vendor or shopkeeper's account, and then a ledger is created. I'm getting into my lesson a bit for tomorrow, I'm giving you some insight here. And then you have that validation to say that it goes into their account and they can actually go in real time, as many of us can. We go onto our phones and we check to see whether or not that money has been deposited. So that shopkeeper has that opportunity to validate the deposit of those funds. So you see, blockchain is complex, but yet it's simple. It's simple. And there are many validation hubs and validations that take place, but everyone in that chain, from myself to the actual shopkeeper or vendor to the banks, know what is taking place. Hence the transparency of blockchain. Barbara has a comment.
Yes, I couldn't hesitate to, because I did once a project on global export and import processes, right? So when you process the food on site and you transport it from Nigeria to the US, to Dominican Republic, and so forth, I mean, in an average export process, you have about 30 documents, paper documents, and the element of trust with paper, even it can be copied, it can be lost, right? It can be just thrown away, or the wind just carries it on. It's so amazing that to a certain extent the regulations look into the trust of paper, but not into the, let's say, the danger of manipulation. And this is, of course, also where blockchain is looking.
Streamline the process. We like to come up with some ideas by which you can get product or service to the end user, the consumer, or the business owner, B2B or B2C. And those opportunities allow for you to innovate around various services, various opportunities in which entrepreneurship can really gravitate. Barbara had mentioned import-export. When I was actually in Nigeria last trip, I had the opportunity of visiting in Nigeria. I actually met with an entrepreneur that was looking to develop a product that was going to have global impact. And so I was consulting with him, and we were working around the idea of using blockchain to actually build that sense of trust. So individuals could actually, one thing, invest in this business, and also utilize the service and the product that he wanted to actually create. I think Howard is going to chime in here.
You read my mind. Now, it comes back to, I know that we, not to dwell too much on food, but, we all need food. And, if we could make this entire process less wasteful and more efficient, that's great. And, there is a project that I'm getting, gearing up for that involves moving from basically seed to shelf. Now, how do you track that process from that seed to the actual plant growing, creating, producing fruit, when to harvest it, all the way through the logistics process, how do you ship it from point A to point B? How do you track the, certain conditions for perishable produce to ensure that it stays in a certain state, and then, to the shelf itself. And you could actually, we haven't mentioned tokenization, but it's basically a digital twin of a physical object, right? And you have the digital version of it, and you could manipulate that. But all along the process, you have to re-verify that you have the physical with the digital, and all the way to the shelf and possibly to the consumer. So there's a interactive way to to interact, a digital way to interact with this food item. And what that, that brings a whole lot more opportunities to bear, because you have this digital version of something. And once you have a digital version, other parties could interact along the process without actually seeing that physical, product or a barrel of a certain food type or whatever. You could have financial products around it, like derivatives. If you have certain volume of a product, then you could bid on it, and there's a whole slew of services that can be built around a simple solution or a simple product as a food item, right, before it actually gets to the consumer.
I like the idea. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I like the idea of also investing in those ideas along the way, because they are trusted and validated. Excellent example. Well, this has been terrific. I'm so thrilled. I was so honored that my panelists today accepted to kick off the blockchain hackathon.